They really want something to be done. They're particularly concerned about childhood obesity because they know what a threat it has become. The Pew Research poll found that 60% of respondents want government to intervene to reduce childhood obesity. And only a few years ago, a similar poll was taken that found that at that time, only 40% of the respondents wanted government to intervene. So in just 5 years, in fact, we've seen a significant growth in our awareness about obesity, the threats to our children, and the need for government to intervene to try to regulate the industry. Now, there's another aspect of this, and I continue to try to explore and understand myself what motivates people to do certain things. I understand what the food industry does, but this is a case that disturbs me even more than any other. And it's the way that the food industry is now using food charities as a public relations device to co-opt potential opponents. By food charities, I mean some large national anti-hunger organizations, our Feeding America, our largest sort of network of food banks, and other organizations, charities that have been known as leaders or have been around a long time, doing important and necessary work. I'll give you some examples. Save the Children. I think you all know Save the Children, one of the more venerable charities in the country, backed away from a soda tax campaign. It had been providing assistance to states around the country to encourage them to create a tax on soda. The idea being that if we tax soda, that will increase the price and it will reduce the consumption of soda, which in turn would reduce obesity. USDA did some research on this and indeed found that if you put about a 20-cent tax on a can of Coke, it would have a significant impact on obesity. Well, what happened? Coke made a $5 million donation to Save the Children. And according to the New York Times, right after that donation was made, Save the Children stopped that campaign. They also received a $5 million donation from Pepsi. At least they're equal opportunity recipients. You know, they're not going to state their brand loyalty. They might as well take money from anybody, right? Growing Power group that has led the charge for improving large urban agriculture, large scale, doing some really phenomenal work in inner city areas, took $1 million about a month ago from Walmart. Now, the Walmart question is another one that we may find have a number of gray areas, but they are making millions and millions of dollars of donations to communities, particularly food organizations all over the country. They just opened up a new Walmart store in my town in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And in the course of doing that, they gave away tens of thousands of dollars to the local food bank. My problem with Walmart is this: it's too big, it's too dominant, it's monopolistic, it doesn't pay its workers enough, it doesn't pay fringe benefits that are adequate to be able to live well in America. I tell the story in my first book about a county food stamp office director, just a county just south of Albuquerque. I was interviewing him for a story, and he was saying he was perplexed by the fact that he had seen this enormous increase in the number of applicants for food stamps. And he was perplexed because the official unemployment rate in his county was only about 1%, which basically is full employment. And then it occurred to him that the two largest employers in that county were big Walmart regional food centers, or regional centers. The wages that those employees were being paid were so low that those folks were eligible for food stamps. So in effect, you, the taxpayer, we citizens are subsidizing through the food stamp program America's largest retailer. That doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, people are taking money now from Walmart, and these are often organizations that ironically are now giving away food or giving away money or giving away services to Walmart employees or former employees who aren't getting enough money to be able to buy food themselves. If I want to end hunger, and I do, if I want to promote urban farming, if I want to reduce obesity, shouldn't I also want to promote healthy food and social justice at the same time? Some of you might remember, well, people my age anyway, older, might remember President Eisenhower's warning to the nation in his 1961 farewell address. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. Substitute the phrase agro-industrial food complex and look at how they have curried favor with politicians and large nonprofit organizations. I think we see the same kind of political relationship being established through these public relations moves. Would food and farm corporations be as philanthropic if they were forced to dramatically curtail advertising to children for unhealthy food? If they were taxed for their high-calorie products that are at the root of America's expensive obesity crisis, or required to pay a living wage to all their employees, and also kept at bay when it comes to influencing public officials? I don't think they would. But there is a big but out there, and it's framed by a rhetorical question that was asked in that egg pamphlet and asked by everybody, including us, and that is, how are we going to feed a hungry world? That is a question that is meaningful, and it's one we all have to take ownership of, because we are expecting 9 billion humans to show up on this planet by the year 2050, and we're going to need a mighty big spread to feed them all. And there are many experts out there who think it's going to be really, really challenging. Residents of countries like Egypt and Tunisia must spend 38% of their annual income on food alone. So when food prices skyrocket, it's no wonder that people hit the streets and dictators often leave by the back door. Even in the US, where the rich spend only 7% of their income on food and the poor 16%, the chronically poor, those making less than $15,000 per year, are spending a combined 50% of their income on food and fuel. So prices of food go up, what happens? You know, there's a serious impact, particularly on people at the lower end of the income scale. In light of all these financial and social challenges, and in the face of so much need, how can we deny or oppose a system that promises to make lots of cheap food available to everyone? It really does create a moral dilemma, in my opinion. What are we willing to give up in return for a certainty that we will be fed? How far and how much are we willing to give up in terms of our own freedom, our own democracy, in order for that assurance from the food industry and from the government that we will be fed? Are we willing to be silent in matters that affect our health, that affect the health of the environment, the way animals are treated, what is happening to our soil and our air and our water? Citizens, wrote the sociologist C. Wright Mills in 1960, become mere spectators or forced public actors, and moral indignation as a public act of expression becomes extinct or made trivial. The will of the people is often relegated to a marginal position when those who claim that higher powers or higher needs preempt their ability or their desire for input and want things to go a certain way, but others, the so-called experts, tell us, no, that can't be. We have to go this way. I had a conversation this summer, by way of illustration, with the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Hawaii, a state which has the highest concentration of GMO crops in the country. I asked him how he made decisions himself on the use of GMOs, since he was part of the decision-making process to allow those seeds to be used in Hawaii. And I asked him that because there was enormous opposition throughout the state to GMOs. I mean, if you took a poll, I can't say this for a fact, but if you took a poll, 60 to 70% of the residents would be opposed or think that there needs to be substantial regulation. He said that all of his decisions were based on science. He felt that science was the major determinant of everything. You know, people's opinions, values, simply their votes weren't as important as his understanding of the science of GMOs. I'm concerned that we're going to relegate or concede too much territory to so-called science and to a few people who seem to be able to interpret it or interpret it to meet their own interests and their own ends. He didn't mention, of course, that Monsanto and others had squashed every attempt by Hawaii's legislature to control the use of GMO seed. Technological solutions do have a role to play in ending hunger, absolutely. They may even be able to promote more sustainable farming practices. I've seen that happen in many cases. No one is arguing that we return to the use of planting sticks or water carried in earthen vases on our head. But if biotechnology and other scientific advances are as valuable to humankind as their proponents claim, why shouldn't they be placed perhaps in a public trust, in the same way that Thomas Jefferson did when he invented the mold-board plow? He knew it was too important for humankind, for him alone to profit from that invention. Why not accede to the public's wishes to label all products that contain GMOs or any suspicious ingredient that a reasonable number of experts and regulators regard as at least problematic? Why don't we have the right to know what is in that package that we buy on the shelf, other than the nutrient content? What about the seeds? What about how that food is produced? There's not enough information for us to be able to make a reasonable choice. Amartya Sen, who is a Nobel laureate economist and who studied the political economies of the developing nations, he studied famine, he studied poverty, and out of his research over a long career, he came to this conclusion. He said that no nation with a functioning democracy, a free press, open discourse, government accountability,